Good morning, dear students. A warm welcome to all of you for our today's digital session for the subject Science and Technology Section B. In our previous session, we have started with a new chapter from Section B, chapter number 15, Life Processes in Living Organisms. In that chapter, we have just started with the introduction of the first life process, that is transportation. In this chapter, as I have told you, three life processes in details you are going to study. One is transportation, the other is excretion, and the third one is coordination. So let us begin with the process of transportation. Let us revise it once again today, and then we will also complete one more topic from this chapter, that is excretion. How excretion is brought about not only in human beings, but also we are going to see how excretion takes place in plants. So let us start with our first life process for this chapter, transportation. Look at the name, a very simple title. The different life processes which categorizes an organism as a living one. Now in the earlier standards you have studied how digested food or oxygen which is inhaled by the lungs is transported to every cell of the human body. Means what? Here you can see a small process like transportation. So which are the different types of other processes which makes an organism a living one? So the different essential life processes in common for living organisms are, first thing is movement. Except for the plants, you see that all other living organisms, including your small unicellular bacteria up to the multicellular organisms, plants, they cannot move from one place to another, but the movement of the leaves, the movement of the branches can be seen very easily. Reproduction, giving the process of giving birth to young ones of their same kind, whether it is animals, whether it is plants, whether it is human beings, that process is known as reproduction. Respiration, inhaling air, exhaling out the toxic gases is called as respiration. Growth, you all know. Excretion means removal of waste products outside the body is called as excretion. Nutrition, providing nutrition to the body. Apart from that, you have other processes like coordination. So in this chapter, we are going to study the three life processes in details. One is transportation in plants. The next is excretion. You are going to study for both plants as well as human beings. And C is the coordination in human beings. How the different activities inside the human body are well coordinated and well balanced. We begin with the first life process for this chapter, that is transportation. In the very beginning, I have told you how the digested food or oxygen, it is transported to every cell of the human body. The farmer, it also tries to transport the water from the wells or the dams through a main channel to every plant. The food which is absorbed by the digestive system is converted into energy, and this energy and oxygen are both transported via blood throughout the body. Now the first process, transportation in plants. Transportation. In general, it means a substance which is either synthesized or absorbed in one part of the body reaches another. Then what about transportation in plants? What does it mean? Now you have seen that most of the animals, including human beings are also a social animal. So they move from one place to another, but plants, they do not. And hence there are many dead cells in the plant body. As compared to animals, they need very less amount of energy, because animals lose their energy in movement, but plants, they do not move, hence less energy is required. But plants, they need all the inorganic substances like nitrogen, phosphorus, magnesium, manganese, sodium, etc. And who is the nearest and richest source of all the substances for the plants? It is the soil particles. Why? Because the roots of the plant, they are in contact with the soil. Now roots of the plants, they absorb the substances from the soil and then they transport them. You eat the food with your hands and then the food is transferred to your mouth. Then the teeth help in chewing the food and then the food is passed to the stomach. This is your process. So for the plants, the roots which are in contact with the soil, they do this job of absorbing the necessary substances from the soil and transporting them. And there are two specific types of tissues to perform this function. One is the xylem and the other is phloem. The main function of xylem is conduction of water and phloem is conduction of food. You know that water and food, these are the ingredients which are required by all the living organisms including plants. So xylem, it conducts the water, whereas phloem conducts the food, and all the parts of the plant are connected with the help of this conducting tissues. Now we will go into a little deeper manner to see how transportation occurs in plants. First we will see absorption with the help of roots. Just now I have told you that roots are in contact with the soil and they play a major role in transportation. You can see the roots of the plants. They contain xylem. So root cells are in contact with water and minerals of the soil. You can see here. Water and minerals, they enter the cells on the root surface due to the differences in their concentration. These are the roots. The water and minerals from the soil, they enter the cells on the root due to the differences in concentration, and as a result of this, these cells, they become very turgid. What do you mean by turgid? The surface formed which is due to the uptake of water. Now this turgid cells, they exert pressure on the adjacent cells which is called as root pressure. Once the cells, they become turgid, they start exerting pressure on the cells which are next to them, which is known as root pressure, and under the effect of this pressure, the water and minerals which are absorbed by the roots, they reach the xylem of the roots, and to reduce this difference in concentration, they are continuously pushed upwards. You can see here, water is being transferred to the xylem. As a result of this continuous movement, a water column is formed which is continuously pushed ahead, and this pressure is sufficient to lift the water up in the case of small plants, in the case of shrubs and small trees, small shrubs and all, herbal trees like tulsi and small plants around you. So this much pressure is enough for the water to be transferred in the upward direction. Next is transpiration pool. You all know that plants, they give out water in the form of vapor through the stomata which is present on their leaves. These are the leaves. The small openings on the leaves, they are known as stomata, and plants excrete, they give out water in the form of vapor through the stomata. Now two cells which are called the guard cells, they are present around the stomata. You can see the guard cells. These cells, they control the opening and closing of the stomata. You know, to take the food inside, you have to open your mouth. After the food has to be chewed, the food is taken in, the mouth has to be closed for the chewing process. So you can do it on your own. But for the plants, these guard cells, they control the opening and closing of the stomata, because plants, they do not have a well organized brain like us. So there are these cells to carry out the function. Now transpiration, it takes place through this stomata. Water is released into the atmosphere by the leaves through the process of evaporation. You can see water is given out into the environment, As a result, the water level in the epidermal layer of the leaf, it decreases, and water is brought up to the leaves through the xylem. I have told you earlier that it is the xylem, a specific tissue which helps in the pulling up, the absorption of water, transportation of water, and hence the water which is lost out by the process of throwing out vapor through the stomata, that water is brought up to the leaves through the xylem so as to compensate for the lost water. And this transpiration, it helps in the absorption of water and minerals and then distribution to all the parts of the plant. Whereas we have seen about the root pressure, it performs the important role of pushing the water up, especially during the night time. So we have studied about the absorption with the help of roots. We have studied what is root pressure. We have seen what is transpiration. Now we will see the transportation of food and other substances in plants. Once we have seen the transportation of water, but the food which is prepared by the leaves by the process of photosynthesis, how that food is transported, that we are going to see as the next topic. Transportation of food and other substances in plants. Now, the food which is produced in the leaves is transported to each cell in the plant body. It is the leaves which help in the manufacture of food for the plants, and this food which is produced in the leaves, it is transported to each cell in the plant body. You know, the food is digested in our stomach, and then whatever it is converted into the fatty acids and all, the absorption of the important ingredients take place, and then it has to be transported to all the parts of the body to carry out the necessary functions. Similarly is in the case of plants. Now, excess food except the amino acids is stored in the roots, fruits and seeds, and this process is called as translocation. Excess food. Now, the body, whether it is the body of human beings, animals or plants, it will not produce or manufacture the food according to the necessity. Always the food will be produced in excess form, and that excess food which is not required, it is stored in the roots, fruits and seeds of the plant, which is known as translocation of materials. It is carried out in both the upward as well as in the downward direction. You can see here in the photograph. Now, it is carried in both upward and downward direction. By whom? By phloem, which is the tissue responsible for transportation of food. Now, translocation of materials, it is not a very simple physical process. It requires energy, and this energy is obtained from ATP. Now, whenever the food material like sucrose is transported towards a part of the plant via the phloem, with the help of ATP, the water concentration, it decreases in that part. What happens as a result of it? Water, it enters the cell. You can see this cells over here by the process of diffusion, and the pressure on the cell wall, it increases due to increase in the cellular contents. Due to this increased pressure, food is pushed into the neighboring cells where the pressure is low. You have studied about the transfer of electricity from the end lower potential to the end of higher potential. Similarly, here is the case. And this process helps the phloem to transport the materials as per the need of the plant. During flowering season, the sugar which is stored in the roots or the stem is transported towards the floral buds to make them open and blossom. I have told you that the excess food, it is stored in the roots, fruits and seeds of the plant, and during the flowering season, you know that the buds of the plant, which have to be converted into flour, they require a large amount of all these food substances. So especially during the flowering season, the sugar which is stored in the roots or stem, it is transported by whom? By the phloem towards these floral buds to help them to open up and blossom. This is about the transportation of food and other substances in plants. With this topic, we have completed with the first topic of the chapter, that is transportation. Now in this chapter, we are going to study about the different life processes. One is which we have completed today, transportation. Next, we are going to study about the excretion system in plants and both human beings. Then we are going to study about the coordination which is brought about in human beings. So now we will just get ourselves introduced with excretion. What is meant by excretion? And then in our next session, we are going to study about the excretion which is brought about in both plants as well as animals. Every session we are going to learn about a single life process. Next time we will revise both transportation and then we will see the excretion in plants and human beings. Now let us just get ourselves introduced with what do we mean by the term excretion. Excretion. Excretion means nothing but the removal of waste or harmful substances from the body. You all, along with plants, animals, consume food materials daily. Also, water is taken up as per the requirement. So, many harmful and waste substances like urea, uric acid, ammonia, etc. they are produced, manufactured in all the living organisms. And if these substances accumulate in the body or are retained in the body for a long amount of time, it can lead to serious harm or even death. And hence it becomes necessary for the body to remove such harmful and waste materials outside the body, to throw it outside the body. And different organisms, they have different methods of doing this, and this entire process is called as excretion. In short, if you have to correlate this term with your day-to-day activities, the garbage which is accumulated in your house has to be thrown out of the house to avoid stinking and different types of diseases. That garbage has to be thrown outside the building, and then the municipal corporation heads and all, they take this garbage away and further dispose it off. So that simple process of throwing the garbage outside your house every day on a regular basis is called as excretion, and similarly is the excretion in all the living organisms. Removal of the waste or harmful substances from the body at regular intervals of time, that is excretion. And as I have told you, different organisms, they use different modes. In unicellular organisms, unicellular means the organisms which have a single cell, waste materials, they are directly eliminated across the cell surface because there is only a single cell to carry out all their processes, whereas process of excretion in multicellular organisms is complex. Complex means difficult. Now we move towards our next topic, that is excretion in plants. As I have told you that we are going to study about excretion in plants and human beings in details in this chapter. Now you might be wondering, excretion in plants. Yes, plants are also living organisms like us, and they also need to excrete, put out the wastes out of their body. Now, how does this technique take place in plants? Are there any definite organs which help in this process? If you see, excretion is a very simpler process in plants as compared to human beings and animals. There is no special organ or system for the excretion in plants. Later on, when you study about excretion in human beings, you will come to know that special organs are allotted: kidneys, urinary bladder, urethra. But here if you see excretion in plants, there is no special organ or system. Then how does this excretion take place? Here there are different modes, different ways by which plants excrete out their waste. First is gaseous substances are given out by the process of diffusion. Most of the waste substances of the plants are stored in the vacuoles of leaf cells and in flowers, fruits and the bark of the stem, and after some time you know that these parts of the tree, plants, they fall off. Then some other waste materials, you can see that they are stored in the old and worn out xylem in the form of resin and gum. You have heard these words. Some waste materials, they are given out through the roots into the surrounding soil. So you can see there are different ways. There is not a single way which is applicable for all the plants. Gaseous products, they are given out by diffusion. Some of the waste products, they are stored in the old xylem. Some of them are stored in the vacuoles of leaf cells, flowers, fruits, which fall off eventually. So in this way the plants excrete out the waste. Next, if you see here, gums, resins, I have put some of the photographs. So some waste materials of the plants, they are useful to human beings, and that is why I have put these photos over here. Some waste like gum, resins, etc., which may be the excretory products for plants, but they are useful for human beings. In some plants, waste materials are present in the form of crystals of calcium oxalate, and they are called as raphides, which are needle shaped, prickle and cause irritation of the skin. You might have heard or observed your mother while she cuts the elephant foot or the arum leaves. Elephant foot is suran. So your hands may also begin to itch if you try to cut those leaves. You can say aruchi pana, that is known as arum leaf. So when you try to cut this, sometimes you get a itching sensation, because when you cut open this part, this waste materials which are present in the form of crystals, they prickle and then they irritate your skin. This is about the excretion in plants. Now we move towards the next topic, that is how excretion takes place in human beings. Are there different organs? Yes. When you speak about excretion in human beings, there are different organ systems in the human body to bring about the different life processes, such as the digestive system, which is responsible for digestion, respiratory system, which is responsible for respiration. Similarly, for the removal of waste materials out of the body, the very important system which carries out this function is the excretory system. Here you can see picture of the excretory system being placed on the slide. Now what does this human excretory system consists of? It consists of a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, then the urinary bladder and the urethra, which helps in putting out your urine. Now this urine, which is the waste product for human beings, it is formed by these kidneys by separating the waste and unwanted excess substances from the blood. Now let us see how this process of excretion actually takes place in human beings and which are the different parts involved in it. You can see here in this picture, this is the picture of the excretory system. There are two bean-shaped kidneys which are situated on either side of the vertebral column on the posterior side of the abdomen. That is the position of the kidneys. The main functional unit of the kidney that performs the basic function of filtration, it is called a nephron. Next slide, just I will show you the picture of nephron. This is the picture of a nephron. So this is the main, you can say, functional unit of the kidney. As you know, in the school, the main functional unit is the principal of the school. So similarly here, the functional unit of the kidney is the nephron. Now we will see about the structure of nephron. In this slide, you can see the photograph of a nephron. Now, each nephron, it has a cup-like thin-walled upper part which is called the Bowman's capsule. You can see here a cup-like structure. Now the network of capillaries in the Bowman's capsule, here inside this Bowman's capsule you can see a network of capillaries which is known as glomerulus. So we have studied up till here that the excretory system consists of a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, urinary bladder and urethra. Nephron is the functional unit of the kidney, and each nephron has a cup-like structure which is called the Bowman's capsule, which contains a network of capillaries known as glomerulus. Now the urea which is produced in the liver, it comes into the blood. When this urea containing blood, it comes into this glomerulus, what happens? It gets filtered through its capillaries and urea and other similar substances are separated from it. You can see the first step of separation of the unwanted substances. So when this urea containing blood, it comes into this glomerulus, due to its network of capillaries it gets filtered and urea and similar substances are separated from it. What about the water molecules and small molecules of some other substances? They can cross the semi-permeable membrane of this Bowman's capsule. The solution, it gets accumulated in the cavity of the Bowman's capsule, then passes into the tubular part of the nephron. Here, what happens? The molecules of water and some other useful substances, they are reabsorbed back into the blood. Which is the waste product which is formed over here? Now the waste product which is formed is urine from the remaining solution which is full of waste materials. The urine is carried by the ureters and stored in the urinary bladder. Now let us again go to the previous slide. The urine. Now all this process has taken place in the kidney. Then the urine is carried by the ureter and stored in this urinary bladder. Afterwards, urine is given out of the body, thrown out of the body through the urethra. The urinary bladder, it is muscular. It is made up of muscles and it is under the control of the nerves. Hence, we are able to keep a control on urination. Sometimes you see that the bladder is very full and you get the urge to urinate. You feel that you have to urinate very quickly. So it depends upon the amount of urine which is accumulated in the bladder. When the bladder becomes very full and you don't urinate, indirectly you are putting a pressure on the kidneys. Somewhere you are damaging the excretory system. And though the kidneys are the main organs of excretion in human beings, the skin and the lungs, they also help in the process of excretion. You know that sweat is given out through the skin. The lungs throw away the carbon dioxide. So these are also the excretory products. So along with the kidneys are the main, but along with kidneys, lungs and skin of the human beings also play an important role in excretion. The right kidney, if you see, is in a slightly lower position than the left kidney. There are two kidneys. So right kidney is slightly lower position than the left, and each kidney has approximately 10 lakhs of nephrons. It is not only a single nephron which is performing the function, but there are about 10 lakhs of nephrons. Approximately 5 liters of blood which is present in a normal healthy person's body is filtered by the kidneys about 400 times every day, and thus if you see the ratio, every day the kidneys filter about 190 liters of blood, from which about only 1 to 1.9 liters of the urine is formed and the remaining liquid is reabsorbed. This is the function, or you can say how excretion takes place in human beings. Function of the kidneys. How kidneys and its suborgans play an important role in excreting the harmful wastes outside the body. With this, we complete the topic of excretion in human beings. In our next session, we are going to study about a technique known as dialysis. if the kidneys fail to function due to any conditions, due to infection or decreased blood supply or any type of injury, accidents, then how the harmful waste are thrown out of the body, what procedure, what process is carried out, that we are going to study in our next session. That process is known as dialysis. After that, we are going to start with the next life process, coordination. How coordination is brought about in plants and human beings. So I request all of you, when you attend the tomorrow's session, before attending that, go through the topics and then attend the session, so things will appear similar to you. Thank you, dear children.